the king of the pirates, the most free person in the world, obtained by finding the One Piece. Everyone has been watching this journey waiting for Luffy to find the One Piece. But what if Luffy never becomes the Pirate King? What if, at the very end of One Piece, Luffy actually loses the final war? Because as crazy as it sounds, the story is slowly showing us that this outcome isn't impossible. Right now in the Elbaf arc, the world is already collapsing. The world government is making its moves. The Holy Knights are active. Imu is directly interfering with battles, and the race for the One Piece is closer than ever. And if Luffy fails here, the entire world changes forever. So, what would the One Piece world look like if Luffy loses the war and someone else wins? Probably the darkest possible ending is of course Imu winning. Imu wants control over history, freedom, and the future itself. In Elbaf, we're already seeing how terrifying this power is. Imu is controlling Holy Knights, transforming giants into weapons, and even interfering in battles directly, showing that the world government is no longer hiding in the shadows. If Imu wins the final war, the Great Pirate Era ends instantly. The government becomes the absolute rulers of the seas. Pirates would be hunted down and erased completely, and the biggest change is that history would disappear again. The Void Century, the Ancient Kingdom, Joy Boy, and the truth about the world would be buried forever. The Straw Hats would either be killed or turned into symbols of rebellion that were crushed, and Luffy would become remembered as a failed Joy Boy, or just forgotten forever, someone who carried the will of freedom but couldn't finish the job. This would create a world where nobody is free anymore. No pirates, adventures, or dreams. A silent world ruled by Imu. This outcome would probably create the least change, to be honest, but the little change would be for the worse. Now this next outcome is a very different one, because if Blackbeard wins, the world most likely will spiral into chaos. Blackbeard has always represented the opposite of Luffy. Where Luffy brings freedom and hope, Blackbeard brings darkness and destruction. Just like his father, he creates chaos wherever he goes, and Blackbeard often capitalizes off Luffy's gravity. We know Blackbeard, he wants power. We already know he's collecting road poneglyphs, capturing influential people like Pudding and Garp, and building his crew for the final war. He's preparing to take everything. If Blackbeard defeats Luffy and reaches Laugh Tale first, he would become the king of the world, not the Pirate King, king of the world. Because Blackbeard would use the One Piece and ancient weapons for complete domination. The seas would become completely lawless, pirates would rule everything, marines would fall apart, and the world would be controlled by fear. This would be the worst pirate era in history, because instead of freedom, pirates would all become tyrants. Blackbeard would create a world where only the strongest survive, and Luffy's dream of freedom would completely die. And with Imu leaving the throne, maybe Blackbeard uses Luffy's focus again and takes that throne. Now this next one is the most chaotic and funniest outcome, because technically, Buggy becoming Pirate King is very possible. The Cross Guild is already competing with Yonkos. Buggy has Mihawk and Crocodile, and the world already sees him as a legendary pirate. So imagine this, the final war happens, Luffy and Blackbeard destroy each other, the world government collapses, and Buggy accidentally finds Laugh Tale. He becomes the Pirate King, not through strength, destiny, but through pure luck. The world would be completely confused. Marines wouldn't know what to do, pirates wouldn't respect him, and Buggy himself would probably be terrified of his own title. But Buggy becoming Pirate King might actually create a temporary peaceful world. Because Buggy doesn't want to rule, he just wants to survive and be rich. So instead of war or control, the world would become disorganized but somewhat free, which is ironically closer to Luffy's dream than Blackbeard or Imu. And this wouldn't even be a surprise because Buggy always manages to get into these situations. Now here's the most emotional and tragic ending. What if Luffy or a single crewmate dies right before the end and never sees the world they fought for? Or the Straw Hats losing completely. No heroic sacrifice, no last second victory, no save from Jinbei, but a total defeat. Because the final war in One Piece isn't shaping up to be a normal battle. It's shaping up to be a war between the strongest powers in the entire world. The world government, the Holy Knights, the Marines, and the Yonkos all clashing at the same time. And in a war like that, not everyone survives. Luffy has always believed that as long as his crew is with him, he can overcome anything. But what happens when that's no longer true? What happens when one by one the Straw Hats start falling? Zoro staying behind to hold off enemies so the crew can escape, and never returning. Sanji fighting until he physically can't move anymore. Usopp standing his ground instead of running, finally becoming a brave warrior of the sea in his final moments. Robin dying knowing the truth of the Void Century will disappear with her. Brook watching his crew fall again just like the Rumbar pirates. And Luffy forced to watch everything crumble around him because this time there's no miracle, no last second power up, no sudden rescue, just a complete and final loss. The kind of loss that even Luffy can't laugh through. And in the end, the Straw Hat Pirates wouldn't be remembered as the crew that found the One Piece, they'd be remembered as the crew that tried to bring freedom to the world, and failed. The world would turn to darkness, the world government would erase their existence, they would attempt to make their names disappear from history, their journey would be buried just like the Void Century, and the Straw Hat flag would become nothing more than a forgotten symbol of rebellion. But even in defeat, their impact would remain, because pirates, revolutionaries, and future generations would hear whispers of the crew that challenged the world itself, a crew that fought for freedom until their very last breath, a crew led by a boy who wanted to become the Pirate King. And even if they lost the war, even if they died, their will would still echo across the sea. But instead of being the Pirate King, they'd just be old legends, the last light of freedom before the world fell into darkness. So which ending would you like to see? I think there's multiple endings that could cap off this series in a great way, and I don't think we'll be disappointed either way. If you made it this far, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.